Hey, you came back. You came back for session 2. I hope if you've done the homework that we discussed, but because today we're going to talk about how. The last session we talked about why and what. Why you're doing a podcast defines what you're doing. But the what defines the how. What you're doing defines how you're doing it. So if you listen to some podcasts, and if you've done a little research, you discovered a lot of different styles, right? And in these styles, what you discovered is what we call podcast show format. Podcast show format. What is podcast show format? Podcast formats are a way to organize your show's content, 1. 2, podcast formats create consistency for your listeners, which goes back to who's listening. A good format will help your listeners describe your show to their friends. Now, the best thing you can do is have a show that somebody can describe instantaneously. Sticking to a single format will make life a whole lot easier. Because the format is, think of it like a pair of shoes. If you wear a size 10 and you try to put on a size 12, it's not going to fit. And no matter what you say to yourself that you wear a size 12, but you really wear a size 10, your walk's going to be off. It's going to be horrendous. And vice versa. If you wear sneakers or shoes too tight, you're going to have corns. Your feet going to be hurting all day long. Right? So, let's go over some of these church show formats. Now, first one we're going to talk about is the church service, or what we call church service event. A podcast is simply the Sunday morning service, which offers members who cannot attend service a way to stay connected. In addition to growing an audience online, the key for success of a successful service is obtaining good audio. So that's the key, to make sure you have good audio if you have a church service. We'll get into that later. But it's your Sunday morning service that you more than likely record. Or say it's on YouTube and it's on a podcast, but you can make it a separate entity. And let me tell you the reason why. Just because you have your show on YouTube, your church service on YouTube, doesn't mean someone can listen to it on the train or the bus or in their car because they can't see it. Well, what if they could just hear it? They can hear it. They can listen to the church service as a podcast. Then you can grow an audience just for that. We have listeners. We have people who subscribe to our podcast for the video and subscribe to our podcast for the audio, or both, either one. But normally someone will, you normally pick why, because it's the way you digest information. It's the way your audience digests information. You want to present your podcast in so many different formats where they don't have an excuse not to listen, or they have a way to listen that they prefer, right? Maybe it's the interview podcast format. The interview podcast format features a host or two who interview a new guest in each episode who brings a unique expertise and experience, which goes to the what. What kind of show is it? What are you talking about? Is it gardening? Is it a church service? Are you going over, is it a Bible study? Like, what is it? That's the most important part. The next format is the solo podcast format. This format is fairly common. It's used by people who have a specific kind of expertise they want to share. You can simply talk into the microphone. Many new podcasters start with this format because it's so simple. Now, on the Church Sound podcast, we have 2 shows. We have one show that's interview-based, where it's 2 hosts. It's myself and Pastor Caleb Winley. And on the second show we do is called the midweek service, the Church Sound Podcast midweek service. What we found is that a lot of the listeners wanted more technical aspects of the show. They wanted me to talk about microphones and how to EQ and how to use compression, all those types of things. And we don't really we delve into some of the technical aspects of it, but we delve into church and real life along with the forays of being in audio video ministry. So we say, you know what, let's create a separate show. It's 8-10 minutes. It's just me. It's just me talking and breaking down technical aspects or breaking down products, doing product reviews, because that is what our demographic asked for. They asked for it. What happened? Our numbers doubled. Why? Because we gave them what they're looking for. Next one is the co-hosted format. This is another common format which involves two people having a straightforward conversation who generally have a great chemistry together. Unlike the interview prop format, however, these two people are both hosts. So it's a co-hosted show. And you see that with say First Take, or if you're a sports guy, or with Skip and Shannon. It's a conversation. Right? It's a conversation between two people. So it's a co-hosted format. The next format is the panel podcast format. Now, the panel podcast format is very similar to the interview format, but with more people. Each episode has a single host or a group of hosts. So your listener may want this because they like the organic conversation between friends. Maybe someone talking about sports. Maybe one friend is an Eagles fan, the other friend is a Giants fan, the other friend is a Redskins fan. You know, those of you who follow football, and they're talking about their teams. And and they have this very unique conversation. So these are the different formats. So let's recap. So your formats are your church service format, your interview podcast format, your solo podcast format, your co-hosted podcast format, the panel podcast format. These are all the different ones you can select from. So remember we discussed the why and the what determines the how. Now, this is where the crazy stuff happens. The file formats. So this is when the what and the why and the how comes together. Is it going to be an audio only show? Is it going to be video only? Is it going to be live streamed to Facebook? Is it going to be live streamed to YouTube? Are you doing live stream to Facebook and YouTube? Are you doing live stream audio and video? Are you doing live stream to YouTube? And then also you're taking that same show, making it an audio podcast, and at the same time making it a rebroadcast on YouTube. What is it? What's the file format? Because the file format determines the work. You heard me. It determines the work. The file format determines the work. Because someone has to create the file format. Someone has to edit the video. Someone has to edit the audio. Someone has to set up the live stream. Someone has to record the video and the audio for the rebroadcast for YouTube, and to cut up the audio for the audio portion of your podcast. What is it? What is the file format? What's the delivery? These are all important, super important things to think about. What's the show schedule? Remember, the what determines the how. What you're doing determines how you're doing it. What's the show schedule? Is the show gonna air weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, twice a week? What is it? Because that also factors in the work. If you have a bi-weekly show, then you have to edit a show for weekly. The show has to be edited. You just can't record the show and go put it up. No, it has to be edited into the format that we discussed. If you have a co-hosted show, then you have to have an engineer to mix your show. know. Didn't think of that. Didn't think of that, did you? Yeah. Who is the team? And a lot of times we run into this, especially when we're dealing with pastors. It's that, I want to start a podcast. I'm going to start a podcast. Who's the team? Who's doing it? Who's recording it? Where's it coming from? What's the topic? Why are we doing it? Who's producing it? Who's editing it? Who's doing promotion and marketing? Is it going to be on the website? Are we doing, who's the website master? Who do we get it to? Your what determines your how. I'm going to say it again. Your what determines your how. How are you doing this? Why are you doing this? How's it getting done? Who is the team? Like in my case, I'm the team. I do the editing. I record the video. I edit. I mix the show. I do social media. I do all of that. But until I get a team, this is what I got to do. What's your recording schedule? Remember, if you have a weekly show, remember your what determines your how. I'm going to say it again. Your what determines your how. What's your recording schedule? What's your editing schedule? Who's handling social media? What about artwork submission? What about uploading? What about your live stream schedule? Remember, your what determines your how. Your what determines your how. How is this going to happen? Who's doing it? So now you know why you're doing it. Now you think you figured out your show format, but you didn't factor in the workload. All the things I mentioned are pertinent to the success or to reach the demographic that you wrote down. And I'm pretty sure, hopefully you've selected by now. Maybe you're thinking about it. Maybe you haven't thought about it yet. Maybe you just, I didn't know it took this much. What's your podcast plan? What's the plan? What's the show format? What's the file format? Who's your team? What's your podcast schedule? What's your recording schedule? All of these things factor in. Your what determines your how. Your what determines your how. Your what determines your how. Your why you're doing it determines the what, and your what determines the how you're doing it. So, here's your homework for session 2. Now, you listen to shows, the first set, and your first set of homework. Now research. Now you've kind of honed in. Listen to shows that fit your format and see how your different styles work. Select your style for, hopefully you've done that. Maybe you haven't, but think about selecting your recording format. What type of show is it? Is it audio? Is it video? Is it both? Is it live stream? Is it all three? Is it multi-format? Like, what is it? Create a podcast success calendar.